Win big in 2024 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the Live Draft Assistant, Free Agent Finder, and Lineup Optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code KNUCKLER. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They got free contests, paid contests coming to a state near you. They're giving out boosts and slash lines all day long. Check it out. It's a fun platform. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you episode 133 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. We got UFC action once again this week with UFC Vegas 91.
Break out the red panties.
So, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I make picks for all major MMA events, regional events, Fight Pass events, major boxing matches. On Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. Follow, like, subscribe, leave favorable comments and reviews. Tell your friends. I will be in the RotoBaller MMA Discord this weekend in the afternoon leading up to the card. Come out, join us. Let's talk about it. I am moving this weekend, so I'm just gonna have to talk to y'all as it's happening when the opportunities strike. Last weekend, there was no UFC. There was a bunch of other MMA on UFC Fight Pass and PFL. Ryan Garcia ended up beating Devin Haney by majority decision in what was a crazy fight. Sometimes crime and drugs and bad behavior does pay off. Ask Ryan Garcia. Ask John Jones. And yeah, that's what it was last weekend. There was no UFC. It was the off week in between UFC 300. So there was a lot of other MMA. This is not a weekend chock full of mixed martial arts, unfortunately. There's LFA, there's UFC, and then we got Ryzen 46 on Monday, obviously late. So it's a slow week. So we have to cherish the opportunities that we have because we have 13 fights for UFC Vegas 91. Starts off with a lightweight matchup between Maheshate Hayaser and Gabriel Benitez. Ivana Petrovic is a heavy favorite at women's flyweight against Na Liang. Lightweight, James Yontop against Chris Padilla, the late replacement. Yontop was supposed to fight Lando Veneta. He was also supposed to fight Gabe Green. Both fell through. Ketlin Souza at strawweight against Marnik Mann. Cal Machado at heavyweight against Dante Mays. The Ultimate Fighter runner-up, Austin Hubbard against Michael Fieglock. 8-1 Michael Fieglock at lightweight. Bantamweight, Ronnie Yaya against Victor Henry. Tim Dirty Bird Means at 33-15-1, taking on Uros Medic at welterweight. Featherweight, Jonathan Pierce against David Onama. Solid matchup there. Heavyweight, Yonata Denise against Austin Lane.
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
Women's flyweight, Karine Silva and Ariane Lipsky. Light heavyweight, the Lionheart look-alike, Bogdan Guskov against Ryan Spann. And the main event, a flyweight matchup between number 8 and number 11, respectively ranked in the world according to Tapology.com, Matheus Nicolau against Alex Perez. This was supposed to be Nicolau versus Starboy 2. And Starboy got us so excited for this year. And very, very quickly, the year was practically over for him. Heartbreaking to see. I really wish Starboy was on this card. Starboy versus Perez. Starboy versus Nicolau too. I'd love to see either. I just want to see that dude fight again. And he's getting me hyped up just to let me down hard. And there was supposed to be two, Joel Alvarez and Matus Rebecki. That ended up getting scrapped, unfortunately. because Alvarez withdrew. I forget why. So that's 13 fights. Starting off with Mahashate and Gabriel Benitez. Benitez. Oh, this is further down than I thought it would be. The plus 164 underdog, Mahashate, the minus 198 favorite. Benitez, loser of 5 of his last 7 fights, dating back to August of 2019. The only 2 wins being against Justin James and Charlion Tavares, both by first-round knockout. Losses in the meantime, granted, to the likes of Sadiq Youssef, Omar Morales, Billy Q, David Onama, and Jim Miller. His last time out, January of this year, got subbed with a neck crank. Mahashate, 11 years younger, started off in the UFC with a 2-fight winning streak, counting the Contender Series, against a dude named Achilles, who had this heel. And then he got a win over Steve Garcia, and, you know, I'll give myself that for that Achilles heel joke. First round knockout over Steve Garcia. 2 straight losses now to Rafa Garcia and Vyacheslav Borshev, who knocked him out in the second round. The last 3 fights have been strong competition for Mahashate, for sure. Benitez, those 2 wins are concerning, you know, in that stretch of 7 losses, because if Mahashate had only fought bums up to this point, I'd maybe be able to give Benitez some of the... I can't do it. I can't think of a joke for a benefit of the doubt in Benitez. But I think Mahashate, his resume speaks a lot stronger than Benitez. You know, even off this 2-fight losing streak, I think this is a really good one for him to get back on pace. You know, I think it goes maybe the route of the Steve Garcia win. You know, this is one where I think Mahashate can get the finish. Mahashate to win by knockout. It's not available yet, but he's minus 198. I think he wins this fight like, oh God, maybe 65, 70 times out of 100, and I think probably the majority of those wins come by knockout. So roll with that. Mahashate by TKO knockout, hit it. And I could see in a week where there are some really heavy favorites, I could see Mahashate being a good price value in DFS this week. Next up, we got a women's flyweight matchup between Ivana Petrovic and Na Liang. Na, the plus 360 underdog, against Ivana Petrovic, the minus 470 favorite. Let's start with Na Liang. It's crazy because we've seen her once a year, and it feels like it was supposed to be more. And Tapology could tell me that. Let's see. She's 19-7 as a pro, by the way. 27 years old. She's still, not old by any stretch. All of her 17 pro wins. Okay, she's got 2 wins by DQ. But the other 17 wins professionally, all inside the distance, 11 sub-6 knockouts. No, she only had the 1 fight canceled, and it was against Brogan Walker Sanchez, which I would have liked to have seen. But 3 losses. 1 a year. It seems like I believed in her each time. She got knocked out each time by Ariana Carnelosi, Silvana Gomez-Juarez, and J.J. Aldridge finished her in the second round. That is not usually the game of J.J. Aldridge. Ivana Petrovic, on the other hand, lost her UFC debut. It was her first pro loss as well, to Luana Carolina. Petrovic, 29 years old, coming out of Croatia. Yeah, born in Croatia. Nope, born in Norway. What the hell is this flag? Croatia. The flag's Croatian. Okay. Came in from Ares FC. You got to trust that organization. All of her 6 pro wins are, there's 1 split decision. The rest inside the distance in a variety of means and rounds. I mean, this is a tough one. Like, not got knocked out or finished 3 fights in a row against, pretty strong fighters for sure. And I'm not a big, Luana Carolina supporter. And it's not like Petrovic, kept it, super close or anything. She got outstruck, pretty considerably, 41-22. She did land 2 takedowns and went for a couple of submissions. I guess, my concern is not just, these have not been strong performances, but she did get at least 6 combined takedowns against J.J. Aldrich and Ariana Carnelossi. I don't know. Na Liang.
Nick, one comment, man. One comment.
Oh, don't be scared, homie.
Honestly, even though I'm coming up with, it's hard to come up with too many reasons to believe that much in Na. Ivana Petrovic, Na Liang had a fantastic record, coming into the UFC as well. She was on 5 straight wins at WLF MMA. The only thing is Ivana Petrovic, I do trust her resume coming into the UFC more. There was probably just a couple better of opponents, but still just not a whole lot of experience there. I don't know, but Na Liang plus 360 seems crazy, considering that Ivana Petrovic did not win that UFC debut against Luana Carolina, and it's not like it was, it's not like it was even all that close. Off that alone, I guess I'd say Na can win 40-45, maybe even, I don't know, 40-45 these out of 100, sure. Plus 360 seems kind of crazy, seems very heavily weighed when we still don't know a lot about Ivana Petrovic. So hit that. And I think for both these fighters, I think that this tells you to go inside the distance. I don't think the fight goes the distance. I do think one of these 2 fighters puts the other one away. And, they both do it in a variety of ways. A lot of different outcomes in this fight. But I'd say, if you want to make Ivana a little bit more worth it, if you believe in her, because she's, probably the one I give the slight deference to just because she doesn't have the UFC losses, then inside the distance. And, not inside the distance too. The fight, doesn't go the distance. I don't know. There's just a lot of losses at this level between these 2 fighters. Something's got to give. And I'm rooting for Na Liang. I can't help it. But I'm interested. I'd be interested, if Ivana looks good out of this. I could kind of get excited about that one again. James on top against Chris Padilla, a lightweight matchup. On top is, where the hell did that go? The minus 450 favorite. Padilla, the plus 350 underdog. Again, this was a late replacement fight. Padilla, 13-6 as a pro. Making his UFC debut on late notice. The statistics are not kind to those fighters. Coming into the UFC, he is 28 years old. Fighting out of California, Gardena, California, to be specific. 7 career wins by knockout, 4 by submission, 2 by decision. Is on a 3-fight winning streak coming in all in UNF. And he was the lightweight champion there. Beat Justin James October of last year for that. And he has the fight coming up, in the UFC. But he's also still scheduled to fight Chris Gonzalez at Uriah Faber's A1 Combat. I don't know if that's going to hold up. But winner of 4 of his last 5, too. The experience before this before this 3-fight winning streak doesn't mean a whole lot. Before that, but the Justin James win in his route to being the UNF lightweight champion is impressive. And that does give you, something to work with if you want to believe in that guy. On top, winner against Malik Lewis in the Contender Series, September 2023. Outstruck him 74-29. Got 2 knockdowns in that fight. He does hail from Peru. 24 years old. Has not lost since August of 2019 when he was 19. Big winning streak for this guy. and it's been a mixture of decisions, 6 in his career and 7 knockouts. You know, Padilla, the majority of his losses are by either submission or decision. So but this could be one for On Top to put away early, you know, because I don't know if Padilla is completely ready for this. The Justin James win does get, honestly, you know, Justin James might be a better win than anything On Top has on his resume, even the Contender Series win. In fact, let's check on what Justin James, 17-10, 34. I mean, he was on a long losing streak, but he also did beat Frank Camacho in the UFC. He fought some good fighters, Devontae Smith, Charles Rosa, Gavin Tucker. So that's a good win for Chris Padilla. I do think that the circumstances are not right for him. I do think that On Top, Goku is the nickname, by the way. I do think that this is a good spot for him, and I think he has the greater ceiling and upward trajectory. I think he's the more talented fighter. I think that these circumstances, even though this hasn't been Padilla's MO for losses, I think On Top gets the knockout. He is a heavy favorite, minus 450. I think that he's worth using in some parlays because I think that he wins like 80 to 85 of these, maybe, probably around that, out of 100. And I think On Top by knockout is the thing that makes the most sense there. But, you know, Padilla, that win over Justin, it gives me some real confidence to put behind him. And if he looks good, it's a guy that could, end up hanging around for a few fights, at least at the UFC level. Women's strawweight, Marnik Mann versus Caitlin Sousa. Sousa, the minus 345 favorite. Marnik Mann, the plus 275 underdog. Let's start with Marnik Mann. Loser of both fights at the UFC level, counting the Contender Series, got knocked out in the second round by Bruna Brazil and just lost a unanimous decision to Josephine Knudsen, September of 2023. She got outstruck 81-8 and taken down 3 times in that fight. It's not good. Those are 2 weak performances, and it's hard to, this is, an opportunity that might be one of your last if you don't come through. She had a win in between against 7-6 Amber Brown by unanimous decision at LFA 157. 2 other fights in LFA, you like to see that strong, organizational association, and fought in Fusion Fight League too, back to her amateur career as well. But not good performances so far at the UFC level. Caitlin Sousa, actually a year younger, lost in her UFC debut by first round submission to Karine Silva, June of last year. Caitlin Sousa, before the UFC, she is 13-4 as a pro, 28 years old. Came in from Invicta, love to see that. Was in SFT, solid organization there, won their Bantamweight championship. And then Invicta, she was the flyweight champion. And now she's at strawweight. She's going to be big against Marnik Mann. I think that's going to be a lot for Marnik Mann to handle. It's not like, Caitlin Sousa has fought UFC level competition in the past too. It was a loss to Ariana Carnelosi. But Marnik Mann got dominated in her last fight. And Karine Silva was able to get, first of all, Karine Silva is good on a 4-fight winning streak to start her UFC career. I forgive that one a lot more. Even though, Josephine Knudsen on a 3-fight winning streak as well. It started off on road to UFC and then the Contender Series and then her debut. I think that, Caitlin Sousa is the one whose losses I can forgive a lot easier. Her only 2 losses in her career inside the distance. The other 8 wins came by knockout, 4 by decision. And, Mann, I don't know, she didn't get finished by, Josephine Knudsen, despite that long dominance in that fight. I just think Marnik Mann is going to get a little bit more overwhelmed in this fight. I like Caitlin Sousa's Invicta experience. Even the LFA wins that Marnik Mann has won, I don't, those just aren't as impressive to me as the wins that Caitlin Sousa has coming into this. All else being a wash, I think she deserves to be a heavier favorite. I think Caitlin Souza wins this fight probably 75 times out of 100. And I think, I don't know, I think I opt for by decision. She hasn't been finishing opponents of late. I think Markman could survive this fight, but it could be one-sided. And Souza, depending on what I don't know, she might be too high of a price with how heavy of a favorite she is. But if it's not the case, give her a look, because I don't think a lot of people necessarily will be this weekend. Next up, we got a heavyweight matchup between Don'Tale Mayes and Cal Machado. Don'Tale Mayes coming out of Louisville, Kentucky. And I believe is a slight favorite. No, this is crazy. I think Don'Tale Mayes started off minus 170 or something. And now, let me check the movement chart here. Don'Tale Mayes started off at minus 185 and is now at minus 105. And Cal Machado, the minus 115 favorite now. That is a significant turn of events as far as how the line has moved. So let's start with Don'Tale Mayes. Winner of one of his last four. There was a no contest against Hamdi Abdelwahab. His last three UFC wins, Rocky Martinez, Josh Parisian, and Andrei Arlovski. He knocked out Arlovski in the second round. He is coming off a loss in a close fight against Rodrigo Nascimento. The loss to Augusto Sakai in between, which actually wasn't that bad. He got outstruck 53-29. It was that fight where he got 6 takedowns against Josh Parisian. The thing about Don'Tale Mayes is, I was saying, too, that he was an obvious, pick against when he was fighting Andrei Arlovski. And he really proved me wrong on that one. This is a guy that I have kind of counted out at a lot of different points in his UFC career. But, he's had to fight some tough fighters. He keeps, getting wins when he needs to. So, at 81-inch reach, 6'6", he is a big heavyweight. Cal Machado won on the Contender Series by unanimous decision over Kevin Zaflarski. Outstruck him 121-17. Mick Parkin then defeated Cal Machado, got outstruck 76-39, but got 3 takedowns. Used the control time to beat Cal Machado. Now, this is the thing, too. I do not know what is driving this line movement. Cal Machado will be at a 3-inch reach disadvantage. Came in through the BFL, where he had beaten, a couple of, two people with double-digit wins in their career, but losing records. Beat 11-7 Edison Lopez at BFL 75 for their heavyweight championship. Then he went on the Contender Series. Professionally, 4 wins by knockout, 2 by submission, 2 by decision. For Don'Tale Mayes, 32 years old, it breaks down 4 knockouts, 3 submissions, 3 decisions. Very surprisingly even from that dude. And he is currently ranked 28th in the world at heavyweight. This is weird. I don't think you can count Don'Tale Mayes out of this one. He beat Andrei Arlovski not even a year ago with a knockout. And Andrei Arlovski had just been, on a very consistent run. Don'Tale Mayes was the second in this 3-fight losing streak, but Arlovski, had won 4 fights in a row from April of 2021 to April of 2022, staying very active, especially for heavyweight. That was a big win for Mayes to overcome that experience difference and what I thought was just going to be a smarter fight in Arlovski. The line starting at minus 185 and going down all the way to where he's actually the underdog now doesn't make sense to me. Give me Don'Tale Mayes to win this fight at least 50 times out of 100. And I think this is, a close fight, but it just doesn't make sense for Mayes to have moved so much. Mayes, minus 102, hit it. And, as far as an outcome of victory, I could see Dontel Mose being a very good price in DFS. You can get it for, if you can get it for $13 to $16, I think that is an excellent value. And Machado is mostly, his only 2 losses are by decision. I don't know if Dontel Mays is the dude to knock him out. It's, Machado's a young dude. It's not like Arlovsky where, he's a little bit for way later in his career and maybe is past that point. And I think it's the second most likely method of victory for Dontel Mays. But I would say Mays by decision, and then I'd go Mays by knockout. And, with Cal Machado, outcome of victory-wise, I don't know. I think you probably go... I think you probably just go inside the distance, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to tell how I think he beats him. A lot of different possible, outcomes of this fight, but I just think that, everything about the way Dontel Mays is being perceived right now doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And with Machado coming off a loss to Mick Parkin, it's not like, even though he outstruck Mick Parkin, and I think that that's going to be a problem against Dontel Mays too, and just the effectiveness of striking, I think Dontel Mays might be able to get Machado to the ground. And so then it's just on Mays to avoid the submission and do his damage. Next up, we got a lightweight matchup between Austin Hubbard and Michael Fieglock. Hubbard, the runner-up on the Ultimate Fighter Veterans versus Prospects. Hubbard is the plus 145 underdog. Fieglock, the minus 175 favorite. Start with 8-1. Michael Fieglock, 27 years old. 4 wins by knockout, 4 by decision. He is coming off a loss in his UFC debut to Fares Ziam. That was all the way back September of 2022. He was supposed to fight Chris Duncan March of last year. So it's been some weird activity for Michael Fieglock, but virtually his entire professional career was spent in Cage Warriors. He was on a 3-fight winning streak coming into the UFC, or not 3-fight winning streak. He was on an 8-fight winning streak because he was, 8-0 at the time. But the 3 fights before that had been wins by unanimous decision. His loss to Fares Ziam was by unanimous decision as he got outstruck 60-28, 3 takedowns to 1. He was not the Cage Warriors champion, but got a lot of wins at the Cage Warriors level. And the combined record for his opponents, for his last 3 opponents coming into the UFC, was 28-6-2. So that's solid. Hubbard, still not coming off a 2-fight losing streak. And lost 3 of his last 4 at the UFC level. This is, a guy who had to make his way back. Only 3 wins at the UFC level since May of 2019 with 5 losses. The last 2 have been to Vink Pachel. He got outstruck 71-56. He did land 4 takedowns. Then he got subbed in round 2 by Kurt Hollabaugh in his return to the UFC on the Ultimate Fighter finale. This is a guy that I do think could give Fieglock problems. Ziam, we were wrong to doubt him, and now he's on a 3-fight winning streak. I think it says a lot about Fieglock, who is, significantly the younger dude, being born in 1996. This is where I think Fieglock does get back on track. I think it's unfortunate, but because I really like Austin Hubbard's game, and I think if it was a different opponent, but I think that Fieglock got his wake-up call in his UFC debut, and I think he bounces back with a nice win against Austin Hubbard by unanimous decision. I think Fieglock wins this fight probably 65 to 70 times out of 100. But statistically, I don't know how this measures out. I don't think either guy lands triple-digit strikes or anything like that. There might be a couple of takedowns between the two. So I think that this is a conservative one for DFS purposes. Next up, we've got a bantamweight matchup between Ronnie Yahya and Victor Henry. Victor Henry, the minus 425 favorite. Ronnie Yahya, the plus 330 underdog.
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
Let's talk about Ronnie Yahya first, based on that sound drop. It's so crazy. Like, Ronnie Yahya actually has won 2 of his last 3 fights. And only 1 loss since, back to February of 2019. The wins are okay. Like, this is a dude who's been in the UFC for a long time now. He was back in the WEC, fighting Eddie Wineland, beating Eddie Wineland, fighting Joseph Benavidez, Takeya Mizugaki, Mike Brown, and has been in the UFC since January of 2011. It's a guy that doesn't get a lot of credit. He's got some great wins early in his career. He was born in 1984, September 1984, so he's almost 40 years old. But again, he's won 2 of his last 3. He got knocked out in the first round against Montel Jackson April of last year, and that last win is November of 2021. But still, he got outstruck by Kyung Ho Gong 43-27, but he got 3 takedowns. That's his game. Get you to the ground. And that's how he subbed Ray Rodriguez with an arm triangle March of 2021. The last 2 losses being to Montel Jackson and Ricky Simon, that's, understandable. And, Ronnie Yahya has been in the game for a long time. I feel like he doesn't get the appreciation that a lot of people do who have been doing that. No doubt because of his fighting style, but I do want to shout that out. But Victor Henry, born in 1987, no spring chicken himself. But, technically, his last fight against Javid Basharat ended up being a no contest. I mean, yeah, it was a no contest. It was a fight where he was doing well. Who knows how that could have played out. But Tony Gravely, he beat him March of 2023 by split decision, despite outstriking him 154-75 because Gravely had 3 takedowns. And the loss before that to Rafael Assunção by unanimous decision, landed 55 strikes to Assunção's 60. He did get taken down twice. And Raoni Barcelos was his UFC debut, a victory at UFC 270. More recent, his first win in the UFC 3 fights ago, more recent than Ronnie Yahya's last win. And he beat Raoni Barcelos by unanimous decision. He got taken down once, but outstruck him 181-134. It's weird seeing Victor Henry that heavy of a favorite. I think that, Ronnie Yahya is going to have to get into the fire with Victor Henry. That's what he makes you do. And I think that Ronnie Yahya will get this fight down to the ground 1 to 3 times. But I think Victor Henry, the volume that he puts out is just going to be overwhelming for Ronnie Yahya. And that style is just not, even if he gets it down to the ground, he's going to have to get a submission. Going to have to. Because Victor Henry is going to get up or is going to survive and throw out high volume strike. If he doesn't put it away, he could land triple digits in this one. He's going to, the wrong thing to do would be super wary of the takedown. I think that, he really can overwhelm Ronnie Yahya on the feet. I think Victor Henry wins this fight 80 to 85 times out of 100. By decision, I think is most reasonable. Because he's going to have to, there's going to be submission attempts. He's going to have to get past those. A good amount of them. La Mangosta is Victor Henry. That's just his nickname. That wasn't me commenting with that and a phrase of Spanish I learned for tonight. So I think Victor Henry by decision makes the most sense. Minus 425, I think, is parlay worthy. I think Victor Henry is very DFS worthy. It is going to be Strike City on Ronnie Yahya. Next up, we got a welterweight matchup between Tim Means and Uros Medic. Tim Means, the Dirty Bird, the plus 250 underdog. Medic, the minus 310 favorite. Let's talk about Uros Medic first. Born in 1993, winner at 2 of his last 3 with knockouts against Omar Morales and Matthew Semelsberger. He got subbed his last time out, November of 2023, at the Allen vs. Craig fight night against Mike Tibek or Albee. The only other loss in the UFC is to Jalen Turner by first-round submission. And 2 wins before that against Mikey Gonzalez and Elon Cruz, both by first-round knockout. All of his UFC wins are by knockout. That's worth noting. Tim Means is 40 years old, born in February 1984. 75-inch reach. He was on a 3-fight winning streak from August of 2020 to June of 2021. 3 unanimous decision victories against Laureano Staropoli, Mike Perry, and Nicholas Dalby. Then a 3-fight losing streak against a really nice slew of opponents. Kevin Holland, Max Griffin, and Alex Morono. He got subbed in 2 of those, lost by split decision to Max Griffin in a fight that I believe that he won. I thought that he won. But that was probably because I had money on him as an underdog, if that was how that one went. Is coming off a win, a dominant win, against Andre Fiallo, outstriking him 104-51. 2 knockdowns, ends up finishing it in the 3rd. Here's the thing. The last time that Tim Means got knocked out was March of 2019 against Nico Price. Uros Medic is a guy that could definitely do it. And I think that both these guys could be worth a look in DFS. And if you're going Uros Medic as the favorite, you have to go Medic by TKO knockout. Tim Means, I don't know exactly, how does it come? Because Medic hasn't lost by decision, but I don't think that changes too much about our analysis here. I don't think Means puts him away. I think Means wins this fight by decision. Plus 250, man. Until I see Tim Means retired, or until I see Tim Means out of nowhere fighting Leon Edwards this Saturday for the UFC Welterweight Championship, I am not counting Tim Means out against anybody at plus 250. Dude is a dog. Dude is a dirty bird. Tim Means.
Nick, one comment, man. One comment.
No, don't be scared, homie.
And anytime I can get a guy like that, the Nate Landwehr rule, whatever you want to call it, plus 250 for Tim Means. Rolling with my dude Cody over there at Blood Money MMA Bets. I think Tim Means wins this fight 50 to 55 times out of 100. And it could be anywhere from 40 to 55, but it's enough for me to take Means plus 250. And if I'm going him, I'm going by decision. Again, if you like Uros Medic, you got to go by TKO knockout. Next up, we got a featherweight matchup between Jonathan Pierce and David Onama. Onama, the plus 142 underdog. Jonathan Pierce, the minus 170 favorite. Let's start off with David Onama. Winner of 3 of his last 4. And I feel like he has not gotten, a whole lot of credit for that. A knockout against Gabriel Benitez, February 2022. Submission victory over Garrett Armfield by arm triangle. The Armfield Triangle, as it is, I suppose. Then he lost a majority decision fight in what was an amazing comeback by Nate Landwehr in what was a sick, I believe, co-main event. August of 2022. It was already that long ago. Holy shit. Crazy comeback, loss or win by Nate Landwehr over David Onama. Then he bounced back his last time out June of last year with a second-round knockout over Gabriel Santos at UFC Fight Night Emmett versus Topuria. Jonathan Pierce, 2 years older, will be at a 3-inch reach disadvantage. From November 2020 to December 2022, Jonathan Pierce was on a 5-fight winning streak that included wins over Kai Kamaka, former guest on this show. Love you, Kai Kamaka, getting that win in PFL recently. He knocked him out in the second round. Gets a second-round submission over Omar Morales. Unanimous decision over Christian Rodriguez. And then a knockout win over Makwana Murakami and a unanimous decision win over Darren Elkins where he landed 110 strikes and 2 takedowns. Last time out, the only time he fought last year, November of 2023, he lost by second-round guillotine to Yoanderson Brito. I like that Onama has only won inside the distance in the UFC. I think that he's probably the fighter that, is probably more likely to... He's only lost by decision, and he's only won inside the distance. I think Onama is the more likely to get an inside the distance victory. I think that there's still, a lot to love about Jonathan Pierce. Besides Yoanderson Brito, his only other loss was Joe Lozon back in 2019. And, some strong wins since then. I like Onama here. I would go inside the distance. I would go inside the distance if you're going Onama, and I don't think that's bad. I do think Jonathan Pierce just minus 170 is probably the safest thing here. I think he wins like 65 to 70 of these out of 100. I think decision is probably, the safest pick as far as method of victory, but that's a tough one to tell. I'm looking at that, and I'm looking for reasons to like Onama, and he very clearly, he easily could be on a longer winning streak. Had just a couple of things going differently in that Nate Landwehr fight. And then that'd be, your two best wins being Garrett Armfield and Nate Landwehr. That's pretty solid. Your only loss being to Mason Jones in your UFC debut. I think I still have to defer to Jonathan Pierce being, optically the better fighter over his UFC stretch. A lot more, a greater sample size for Pierce. He's the younger dude. I think that he's just prepared to win a fight in more well-balanced ways. So that's where I land on that one. I think that is going to be a really fun fight. It's going to be one that'll be really exciting to have a stake in, I'm sure. There could be a real roller coaster effect to that one. Next up, we got a heavyweight matchup between Austin Lane and Yonata Denise. Denise, the minus 265 favorite. Austin Lane, the plus 215 underdog. Let me make sure I didn't skip anything. Definitely did not. We got 4 fights left. Let's go. Austin Lane. This guy bounces around. It seems like he's been more or less a part of this level of MMA for a long time. He's 36 years old, an 80-inch reach. I believe he's a former pro football player, or at least college football player. And, since how far apart? Okay, his first fight at this UFC level was in 2018. He lost by first-round knockout to Greg Hardy on the Contender Series. The guy's been in Combat Night Pro, LFA, Fury FC, where he won their heavyweight title. Got his win on the Contender Series by first-round knockout against Richard Jacoby, September of 2022. There was that eye poke, no contest against Justin Tafa the first time, and then he lost by first-round knockout in his return to the UFC September of last year. Yonata Denise, 32 years old, 79.5 inch reach, 6'4". This guy is a high-level kickboxer. A lot of kickboxing experience, high-level kickboxing experience. He's he has been a champion in the kickboxing game. Was a heavyweight champion at ACB Kickboxing. Let's see if we can find some other titles just for... I can't find any more titles, but he's a well-accomplished kickboxer. Has not lost in MMA ever. He's 6-0 as a pro. And, as a pro in MMA, all 6 wins have been by knockout. With Immortal FC, Spartacus MMA, won on the Contender Series against Eduardo Neves by first-round knockout. Austin Lane, I do believe he's an athletic dude and explosive, and I do think that, if you buy into Austin Lane, you think that he, utilizes those factors to beat a guy kind of, a little bit more inexperienced at this level of MMA, catching him by surprise. The way more likely thing is that Yonata Denise, his skill in kickboxing is going to be way too much for Austin Lane's, intangibles to be able to handle. I think Yonata Denise gets the knockout here, overwhelms Austin Lane, and, Denise in that first round knockout landed 25 strikes. He did get hit with 24. That is concerning, but got 2 knockdowns in the process. Give me Denise by TKO knockout. Austin Lane.
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
And I don't mean to be that hard on that dude. But I think that we've seen what you can do against this level of competition, especially guys that hit hard and are good strikers, and it has not been a good sample size. Austin Lane, for being a 12-4 pro, the UFC really uses him as a guinea pig against people that they just want to see him lose to. And I think that that's a situation he's kind of been put in. So, Denise minus 265. Denise by TKO knockout is minus 200. And I think that that's where you got, minus 200 is even good for a parlay, honestly. Because I think that's how he wins 95 to 100% of the wins that he does get out of 100. And DFS, give me Yonata Denise in a night of heavy favorites where he actually might be at a not too bad price. Not like, north of, probably not north of like 20 or 21, I wouldn't imagine. Next up, we got 3 fights remaining. And one is Ariane Lipski versus Karine Silva at women's flyweight. Silva. Now I gotta scroll up for some reason here. Silva, the minus 148 favorite. Ariane Lipski, the plus 124 underdog. Let's start with Ariane Lipski. Winner of 4 of her last 5 fights. Decision against Mandy Bone, where she landed 87 strikes for 2 knockdowns. Landed 101 strikes against J.J. Aldrich en route to a unanimous decision. A split decision win over Melissa Gatu, where she got outstruck but did land a takedown. And then a win her last time out against Casey O'Neill by second-round armbar, December of last year. She got 3 wins in 2023 out of 3 fights. So she's been on a really solid tear. Karine Silva, born in 1993. They both have a 67-inch reach. Her nickname is Killer, which you love to see. All 4 UFC wins have been by submission, but she's done good volume striking, en route to that. Wins over Poliana Botello by Darce choke, Ketlin Souza, the aforementioned Ketlin Souza, and first-round guillotine over Mariana Moros. Lipski, her losses in the UFC have mostly come by knockout, unfortunately. Knockout and decision. Knocked out by Priscilla Cochera, Montana De La Rosa, Antonina Shevchenko. Wins against, up until the Casey O'Neill fight, wins against very mid-level competition. And really, Casey O'Neill, I guess her last, her 2 biggest wins are good. This is a tough one. Karine Silva has just made very quick work of all her opponents. And I can't take away from that. Especially against Mariana Moros, getting the knockdown, outstriking her 30-16, and then still getting the submission in the first round. She got 2 wins last year. I think that the upward trajectory is on the side of Karine Silva, obviously. The Killer is on her way up. No one's been able to stop her. No one's been able to look all that good against her in the UFC. Even Yan Kui was the only person that's had like real success, in landing 27 strikes and 2 takedowns against Karine. Still got subbed. So I think we have to defer to Karine Silva. And let's see if, because Silva's 17-4 as a pro. 8 wins by knockout, 9 by submission, 0 by decision, all pro wins inside the distance. And I think that's where you go here. I think Silva wins this fight like 65 times out of 100. I think minus 148 is a good number. If Lipski moves, significantly in these next few days and gets up in the plus 150 range, which would be, pretty heavy, or, there'd be some decent movement. Where did it start? Lipski started off minus 130 and ended up moving to plus 127. So, you're getting a good number on her now, comparatively speaking. I think Karine Silva inside the distance is the way to go. I think both these fighters are worth a look in DFS too. Lipski's going to be less expensive, and she's shown that she can land high-volume strikes in those fights. That's something that Karine Silva has, in the short amount of time that her fights have lasted, has at least had to deal with, is, getting hit about the same amount of times as she's hit the opponent. But Karine Silva, I think for, her 4 straight submission victories, worth the look in DFS as well. And hopefully, this being a close fight helps to keep her price down. And we are to the main event of the evening. And we got a light heavyweight matchup between Ryan Spann, Currently ranked number 12 in the world at light heavyweight, according to Tapology.com, against the Lionheart lookalike, Bohdan Guskov, 15-3 as a pro. Guskov is the plus 164 underdog. Ryan Spann, the minus 198 favorite. Let's talk about Ryan Spann first. Looked like he was getting it together. For real, looked like he was, won 3 of 4 from March of 2021 to November of 2022 against Misha Serkinov, Ian Kudalaba, and Dominic Reyes, all by, first round finish with a sub against Ian Kudalaba, knockouts against the rest. The Dominic Reyes win looked really, really good at the time. And Reyes, for a guy who should have been the light heavyweight champion at one point, that's a rough way to end a 4-fight losing streak so far when it started with John Jones, Jan Blachowicz, and Yuri Prochazka. Spann now coming off 2 straight losses. Lost to Anthony Smith again his last time out, August of last year, by split decision, getting outstruck 91-59, taken down once, and a loss to Nikita Krylov before that by early triangle choke in the first round. Bogdan Guskov, Sarovich, that's his nickname, from Uzbekistan, 15-3 as a pro, 31 years old, 76-inch reach, 13 career wins by knockout, 2 by submission, 0 by decision. The guy is a finisher. So his last 2 losses to Vyacheslav Vasilevsky and AMC Fight Nights back in 2020, has a long professional record, for being so new to the UFC, and he's not old. Was the, an MMA series before that. This guy, his 1, 2, 3, 4. His 4 wins before his loss in his UFC debut to Volkan Oezdemir. I'm going with that. Were all first-round finishes, first-round knockouts. And then he bounces back and gets a first-round knockout against Zach Pauga. You step in on what I believe was late notice against Volkan, get subbed early. Okay, that's very understandable. September of last year. But then this year, you come back and you beat the Ultimate Fighter runner-up and Pauga, in devastating fashion. Bogdan, that is impressive. I think that this fight is appropriately handicapped. It seems like this fight is, made to, if Bogdan wins, great. It's a new, contender that they can put in some high-level matchups. If Spann wins, it allows them to keep using him the way that they have, filling up these fight night co-main events. Might have even been a main event or 2 in there. And, because he is, a pretty marketable fighter, he's exciting. I think Ryan Spann by, first round knockout or by knockout, I think that's probably where, the logic tells me to go. I think Guskov's win against Pauga is very impressive. This is a different fighter, and this is a guy that's also designed to get you out in the first round. Minus 198, Spann, I think he does win 70 of these fights out of 100. Maybe 65 if you're being really skeptical of him. Spann by knockout plus 200. Spann inside the distance minus 165. Both solid numbers. Hit him. Guskov inside the distance. That's plus 200. That's a very good number too. This is going to be an exciting one. I think that you just have to opt for the guy in Ryan Spann who we've seen beat high-level UFC light heavyweights. I think there is a place for Bogdan Guskov in the UFC light heavyweight division. The question is, how high? And we're going to find out. But, losses to Volkan, your UFC debut, and then bounce back with a win against Zach Pauga, there is a gap between those 2 things. And Ryan Spann's going to help fill us in for that, for the Lionheart lookalike, which should become Bogdan Guskov's nickname for how many jokes there have been about a Ryan Spann versus Anthony Smith 3 happening this Saturday. And, folks, we are to the main event of the evening.
Break out the red panties.
Down the wrong pipe.
but I'm not impressed by your performance, and I look forward to...
That was aimed at me. Sorry. We have a flyweight main event between Alex Perez, the plus 150 underdog, against Matheus Nicolau, the minus 180 favorite. Let's start with Alex Perez, shall we? Here's the problem with Perez, all right? I said it last time before the Muhammad Mokaev fight, which ended up being, pretty competitive. Still got thoroughly worked by Muhammad Mokaev. Outstruck 47-30, taken down 3 times en route to a unanimous decision loss. You look at Perez, all right, his last 3 losses were to Davison Figueiredo by first-round guillotine November of 2020 in a title fight that after beating Mark De La Rosa, Jordan Espinoza, and Yossi Formiga, you've heard me say it several times, I never thought that was a title fight that he was ready for, or I never thought he was a legitimate threat to win the flyweight championship against Davison Figueiredo. But I'll give him credit in that, that loss was to the champion, who, looked incredible at UFC 300 on his way up the bantamweight ladder. Then he lost to the guy by first-round submission, who's the UFC champion now, Alexander Pantoja. And then, so 2 champions, and then the guy who's probably, even though Steve Erceg is going to be the flyweight prospect fighting for the title, Muhammad Mokaev in a sea of flyweight prospects is probably the most notable. So credit to Alex Perez. He's made it very clear, and stepping up, less than 2 months after that fight against Mokaev to take on Matheus Nicolau as a replacement. It's ballsy. So Alex Perez.
Nick, one comment, man. One comment.
No, don't be scared, homie.
And you know that he's not. It's like his 4 UFC losses are to Joseph Benavidez, Figueiredo, Pantoja, and Muhammad Mokaev. Hard to fault him for that. But his last win was June of 2020. That's too long ago. And that 3-fight winning streak was never that impressive. I thought he was rushed to that title shot. Born in 1992, the dude still got, time. Nicolau, born 1993, he will have a 1-inch reach advantage. Winner of 4 of his last 5. It was a 4-fight winning streak where he beat Starboy Kopp by split decision. A fight that a lot of people thought that, Kopp won. Looking back, it was close. It was very close. You definitely can't call it a robbery or anything. And Nicolau, at least fought the better mixed martial arts fight. And that's why he ended up getting that split decision. Gets a unanimous decision over Tim Elliott. Unanimous decision over David Dvorak. And a second-round knockout over Matt Schnell. The only guy to beat Matheus Nicolau, dating back to July of 2018 in the UFC, was Brandon Royval by first-round knockout April of last year. The activity level does concern me. And part of that is, Manel Kape's fault. The activity level does concern me, just the one fight since December of 2022. Alex Perez very clearly wants to get back in there fast. Seems like that could be a mistake. Nicolau has 4 wins since Alex Perez's last win. They both have only lost to, champions or championship contenders. Nicolau's other loss was in 2018 by first-round knockout to a veteran of the division, Dustin Ortiz. I think the most logical route here is Nicolau by decision. He is the minus 180 favorite. I think that he probably wins this fight by decision, I got to say, 70 times out of 100. I think this is a much more manageable fight for Perez. But plus 150, I just don't think that's enough for me to like him for all the weird, gaps, the questions about, how long ago that winning streak was, how long it's been since he's won. It's got to wear him out to fight so many really good opponents in a row. Nicolau has been a lot more measured. That's hurt him in some ways in a division where you can rise fast. But Nicolau's 4-fight winning streak, that he was on March of 2021 to December of 2022, that's 4 really impressive names, and he just kept taking care of business. I think he does that on Saturday. I think Nicolau wins this fight by decision. That is plus 215. Hit it. Ow! And Perez, I think that I think I would maybe go like Perez inside the distance, plus 300. I don't know. It's just so hard to call things with that dude. But hey, love a flyweight main event. I know this is a card that everybody's hating on because it's after UFC 300. Look, after a UFC off week, I'm ready for about any fight night main event that you can throw at me. All right, and I love the flyweight division. Love to think about who these guys, whether they win or lose, who they'll be fighting next. There's a lot of prospects in the UFC flyweight division that need a place to go. But folks, that is it for episode 133 of RotoBallers official MMA podcast. Tap that. We got UFC Vegas 91 this weekend.
Break out the red panties.
Again, for all my picks on everything combat sports, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast, like, subscribe, leave favorable reviews, comments, tell your friends, spread the word at Tap That MMA Podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. Come out to the RotoBaller MMA Discord on Saturday. Let's talk about UFC Vegas 91. It'll be so good to get back to UFC action, especially in a week that is so scarcely populated with MMA events. And hey, spring football season. We got another week of UFL action. Check out my UFL gambling content coming out every week on RotoBaller. Folks, thanks for listening. Have yourselves a great weekend. Enjoy the return of the UFC this weekend. Peace.
Break out the red panties.